Well, good morning, everyone. Good to see you. I usually tend to sit during my sermons, just kind of easier for me, and I feel like I'm a better preacher that way. But a couple times a year, I'll end up standing, and it's called allergy season. Just kind of works better in that regard. So, sunflowers, I'm from Kansas. I love to see them. I do not like what they do to my upper respiratory system. So actually the other day, my wife and I were driving home. We were driving up 344, and we ended up talking about 23 years, almost 23 years that we came in contact with Valley View Christian Church, and in November will be 23 that we've actually been here as on staff. And so it's been a pretty cool thing. And we were able to talk about how the church has changed a lot through the years, how just the ministry and identity of the church is completely different. And I remember there's one particular story that happened, and I'm going to venture to say it's probably within the first year. There was a lady who was teaching Sunday school, and she came one Sunday after church, and she had her packet of all of the Sunday school material, and she handed it to me, and all she could get out is, "I quit." And I was like, and I tried to be like really nice and so on like that, and like, "Well, I'm really hate to hear that, blah, blah, blah. Can you tell me why you need to quit right now?" And she tried to get her words together, and all she could get out is, "They won't sit still." And that was it. And so I went to the elders meeting a few weeks later, kind of give the report as far as what's happening in ministry. And I explained that like she had quit, and it was rather dramatic and different things like that. And as we were talking about it, I remember Tom Schaefer, one of our elders, saying, "It's because we are reaching messy people." See, like nothing against those of y'all that were here early on. They were like, everybody was really good and neat, and everybody said yes sir and yes ma'am and all that kind of stuff. And we started reaching these families that, for all intents and purposes, they were far from God. And so they were bringing mess into the church. Now, a lot of churches would say, "Hey, that's not us and we don't want the mess," but instead, the elders and I began to pray that God would send us more messy people. Because here's the reality. We live in a messy world. And we all have messy pasts. And we all have stuff in our life that if, it was displayed on the screen or printed on Facebook, it would really reveal a big, giant, gargantuan mess. And no matter how we try to avoid the messiness of the world, at some point in time, that mess is going to be visited upon us, and it's just going to be a reality. And so as Christ followers, we have to figure out what it looks like to have a messy life, to live in a messy world, but yet have a faith in Jesus in all of the mess around us. We're going to take a look at a story from the life of Elijah today, and we're going to see a guy. His name is Naaman, and Naaman really kind of had all of the check marks. He had a lot of the checking the box as far as saying life is good, but then life got messy, and God cleaned up the mess. And then he had to figure out what it would look like for him to follow God in a messy world. And so I think there's something that we can pull from that here today. We're going to be in 2 Kings chapter 5, and we're going to start with verse 1. It says, "The king of Aram had great admiration for Naaman, the commander of his army, because through him the Lord had given Aram great victories. But though Naaman was a mighty warrior, he suffered from leprosy." Leprosy is a skin disease that, especially during the ancient world, meant that all bets were off, and no matter what good was happening in your life was over. In fact, I want to read this particular verse from the ESV version, because I think they do it really, really well. Naaman, commander of the army of the king of Syria, was a great man with his master and in high favor, because by him the Lord had given victory to Syria. He was a mighty man of valor, but was a leper. Now think about this, commander of the army. He was a great man in high favor. The Lord had given him victory. He was a mighty man of valor. If you want to look at this and think about all of the boxes that Naaman checks in life, he had a great job. I mean, there was the king, and I'm sure king had advisors, but he was general over all the armies. He was a great man. He had great character. He had an impeccable reputation. He was respected by people. He was liked by his boss. He was brave. But he was a leper. You see, I think we can understand that power and status mean nothing if there's a but, not backside, in your bio. You can have all of the check marks of everything that needs to be done to have a good life, but if there is that one thing but there's something else, it cancels everything else out. And maybe you get that. Maybe you have experienced that life was good, and everybody looks at your marriage and you think that everybody thinks it's great, and they look at your job, and they look at your house, and they look at the 2.5 kids and a dog that makes you the full American family, and they say that is awesome and that is great, and I love their vehicles, and I just love everything about their life. But then but you know she's about to leave him. But you know that their marriage is a sham. But you know that he has a hidden addiction. But you know that she has a hidden sin. But you know that really on the inside they're dying because of the abuse that they received as a child. You understand that life can be really good, but there's always that but that makes life really, really tough and really, really messy. But one of the things that I think is beautiful here is that this story doesn't involve just one verse. Let's look at verses 2 and 3. At this time, Aramean raiders had invaded the land of Israel, and among their captives was a young girl who had been given to Naaman's wife as a maid. One day, the girl said to her mistress, I wish my master would go to see the prophet in Samaria. He would heal him of his leprosy. And so I want you to see the reversal of fortunes here. Because you have a young girl who checks none of the boxes. She's essentially a prisoner of war. She is a slave. And we look at her life, and no one would really want her life. But she has something that kind of equalizes the entire thing, and that is faith. You see, she is able to understand where hope is, where hope can be found. And when she says that there is a prophet in Samaria, there's a prophet in Israel, we understand that she is saying, I have faith in God that He can solve this problem. And so I think about, when you talk about the reversal of fortunes, greatness is not found in the words used to describe you. It really comes down that greatness is found in your faith in Jesus. I did a funeral yesterday. In the last 30 years, I really don't know how many funerals I have done. In fact, I've done so many funerals, people will come up to me and say, "You did my dad's funeral," and sometimes I'm like, "Yeah, I'd forgotten all about that one." But I can tell you that the one thing that matters more than anything else, when I'm standing up and I am talking about a person, I can spend all day, every day, talking about their greatness. But without faith in Jesus, it is all erased. And so this young woman had faith that God could do something about the predicament of Naaman. And so we read that verses 4 through 6. So Naaman told the king what the young girl from Israel had said. "Go and visit the prophet." The king of Aram told him, "I will send a letter of introduction for you to take to the king of Israel." So Naaman started out carrying as gifts 750 pounds of silver, 150 pounds of gold, and 10 sets of clothing. The letter to the king of Israel said, "With this letter I present my servant Naaman. I want you to heal him of leprosy." Now there's a couple things here that's kind of interesting. And I think about that. This kind of reveals how important Naaman was. See, you think about you're important in your job. How many of you have a boss who would spend millions of dollars for you to go to the doctor? Ain't going to happen. Even the best bosses in the world. So the king of Syria here sends millions of dollars as a gift to the king of Israel so that he would heal his right-hand man of leprosy. But then we get to verse 7. The king of Israel read the letter. He tore his clothes in dismay and said, "This man sends me a leper to heal? Am I God that I can give life and take it away? I can see he's just trying to pick a fight with me." So the king learned something about himself. The king learned something again, he's tearing his clothes. And this isn't like Hulk Hogan, "Look how awesome I am." This is, "Look at me, how distraught I am," as he is tearing his clothes. But here's something that we need to chew on. Here's something that the king of Israel figured out. And it's something that we probably need to figure out as well. And that is that the kings and kingdoms of this world are extremely limited in their ability. The kings and kingdoms of this world are extremely limited in their abilities. So, by the way, it's election season in America. It's probably like our number one spectator sport. Okay? And up until a few weeks ago, it kind of seemed like the drama was going to be pretty low with this election. And then somebody said, "Hold my root beer." Right? And it just got crazy all over again. And listen, I don't want to trivialize the fact of the matter is that the people that rule over us in governmental authority, they can be very important. And they can cause a lot of good and they can cause a lot of damage. And so here in America, one of the things that we understand, we talk a lot about is economy and how they can kind of make or break the economy, right? But I think it's even more important than that. It's the issues of welfare, and it's issues of safety, and issues of freedom. So these people wield a lot of power, and so we should pray for them. And as Americans, again, if we have the right to vote, we should do what we are able to do with the freedoms that we have. However, if you're here today and you've got a lot of great things in your biography and a lot of great adjectives to describe how awesome you are, but there's a but. But my marriage is a sham or a wreck. By the way, we have a marriage retreat coming up. I'm going to put a shameless plug in for that. You just got medical results and they're not good. You're dealing with guilt from past behaviors. You're dealing with a hidden sin. You're dealing with a hidden addiction. If that's your story, government is extremely limited in their ability to help you. In fact, it's almost nil. And they may think they're God, and they may want loyalty that only God deserves, but deep down they know they're not God. And deep down we know the same is true. They aren't God. But again, this isn't the end of the story. Let's read verses 8 through 10. Excuse me. But when Elisha, the man of God, heard the king of Israel had torn his clothes in dismay, he sent him this message: "Why are you so upset? Send Naaman to me, and he will learn that there is a true prophet here in Israel." And I think it was when he was saying that there's a true prophet of God, and there's a God in Israel. So Naaman went with his horses and chariots and waited at the door of Elisha's house. But Elisha sent a message out to him with this message, or messenger out to him with this message: "Go and wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan River." There's a little bit of baptism imagery here. "Then your skin will be restored, and you will be healed of your leprosy." Now, I'm just going to throw something out that is interesting to me. Maybe the second most important person in the nation of Syria is at your door. So the implication should be either Elisha invites him in, or he goes out to meet him. He does not give orders from his recliner. Seriously. It's almost like he's like, "Yeah, just go over and just do this over here." And it almost feels like he's ambivalent toward the situation. It almost feels like he's laissez-faire, like he's very hands-off here. And I think about this situation, and it's kind of a jerk move. I don't think he was a jerk. I don't think he was lazy. Could be that he was an introvert. There are people like that, and they're okay. I'm married to one, and my wife is married to another one. So, the reality is, maybe he had some insecurities. We do know that he was follically challenged. Wait on that one for just a moment. He was bald, and he got teased about it. I don't know why he didn't go out, but Naaman wasn't very happy. In fact, as we read in verses 11 through 14, this is how Naaman responded. Naaman became angry and stalked away. I thought he would certainly come out to meet me, he said. I expected him to wave his hand over the leprosy and call on the name of the Lord his God and heal me. Aren't the rivers of Damascus, the Abana, and the Pharpar better than any of the rivers of Israel? Why shouldn't I wash in them and be healed? So Naaman turned away and went away in rage. But his officers tried to reason with him and said, "Sir, if the prophet had told you to do something very difficult, wouldn't you have done it? So you should certainly obey him when he says, simply go and wash and be cured." So Naaman went down to the Jordan River and dipped himself 7 times as the man of God had instructed him, and his skin became as healthy as the skin of a young child, and he was healed. Now, I think about Naaman here. What did Naaman want? He wanted grandeur. He wanted the pizzazz. He wanted the flair. He wanted he wanted Elijah to come out and, do all this fancy stuff, right? But I think there's something for us to chew on. Because what God really wanted, what Elisha told Naaman to do, was simple obedience. And while we want grandeur and fanfare, God wants simple obedience from us. I think that's what God has always wanted from us. And I think if we're not careful, we can get at a place and a point where we get addicted to the fanfare and the pizzazz in walking with Jesus. I'm on Facebook, and I have friends that go to other churches and minister at other churches, and I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say, worship was lit. I don't know what that means. But if we're not careful, we're going to get like caught up into the emotion of it all, caught up in the grandeur of it all. I even think that even walking with Jesus, I think one of the things that we love to do is we be seen. And I don't know if you're aware that there's a little thing called a culture war going on. And there are culture warriors that feel like we got to win this battle. And so they're always inserting themselves into every issue that is going on in our culture. And sometimes we feel bad if we're not one of those people that is inserting ourselves and making our voice heard and demanding our rights. What if that's not God's will? What if He doesn't want us to be active participants in the culture war? What if He just wants quiet, simple obedience from us? In fact, the Apostle Paul told the Thessalonians this in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 11. Make it your goal to live a quiet life, minding your own business and working with your hands, just as we instructed you before. What if God's will for you is just to be a good neighbor? To be a good employee? To be a great husband or wife? What if His will for you is a quiet life and simple obedience, minding your own business? Because I notice what it says in verse 12. Then people who are not believers will respect the way you live, and you will not need to depend on others. I think maybe I get it. If we're not careful, when there's grandeur and fanfare, it becomes all about us. Simple, quiet obedience of God puts the spotlight on Jesus. Maybe that's what Elisha was trying to get across this entire time, taking the focus off himself. People say, look how awesome he is, and letting the spotlight just simply be on God. Because notice verse 15. Then Naaman and his entire party went back to find the man of God. They stood before him, and Naaman said, now I know that there is no God in all the world except in Israel. So please accept a gift from your servant. Now I know, not that Elisha is great or Naaman is great, but now I know that there is a God, and the only God that exists in all the world is the God of Israel. So I want to let you know something here. We talk about miracles. In fact, over the last 6 weeks, we talked a lot about miracles. You go through the life of Jesus, there's a lot of miracles. But I want to let you know that the point of miracles in the Bible is not about the outcome. It's about the revelation. You see, the point of miracles in the Bible is to reveal the nature and character of God. That's the point. In fact, I remember Life of Christ, 1991-92 school year. Dallas Christian College. Clay Ham was the professor. And I remember him saying over and over and over and over again, every time we went to a miracle story in the life of Christ, he would say, problem, solution, reaction, theological implication. So we can look at the problem, the solution, the reaction of people, but ultimately, what does this say about God? What does this say about Jesus? And when I think about this, and I think about all of this, I think a lot of people get at a place where they feel like something is wrong if they've not experienced a miracle. In fact, it was one of the funerals I've done. I remember this lady, a long, huge battle with cancer, but in her battle with cancer, she had one of those, I call them suction cup stained glass windows. You remember, like, you put the suction cup on the window and it's a little stained glass window? Cheesy things. If you still have them, they're not cheesy, by the way. But she shared the story of how Jesus revealed himself through, the sun shining through, and had a vision and different things like that. And I remember as she told me that story, it wasn't a few weeks later that a lady who quit Sunday school was in my office crying. Where is my miracle? Where is my vision? Why don't I get that? And so I want to tell you that if you have never experienced like that grandeur and splendor miracle, there's nothing wrong with you. But if God chooses to reveal his character and his nature through a miracle with you in proximity, you're not awesome. Because it's ultimately about God, Jesus, getting the spotlight, not man. And that's exactly what happened here. And let's go ahead and read on in verses 16 through 19. It says, but Elisha replied, as surely as the Lord lives, whom I serve, I will not accept any gifts. And though Naaman urged him to take the gift, Elisha refused. This was probably a cash cow. This could have been some of the stuff that Naaman had brought to give as a gift to the king. But then it says, then Naaman said, all right, but please allow me to load two of my mules with earth from this place, and I will take it back home with me. From now on, I will never again offer burnt offerings or sacrifices to any other god except the Lord. And the Lord here, when you read, when it's all caps, that is Yahweh. That's the name of God, the personal name of God. However, may the Lord pardon me in this one thing. When my master the king goes into the temple of the god of Rimmon to worship there, and leans on my arm, may the Lord pardon me when I bow too. And it says, go in peace, Elisha said. So Naaman started home again. So get this. Naaman's knowledge of the true and living God produced life change. You see, miracle, God revealed who he was. And Naaman came to a real knowledge of that living God. And it changed his life. He said, listen, I want to take dirt from Israel. I want to get a couple wheelbarrows, put them on, the loads on my donkeys. I want to take dirt back to Syria. So here's the deal. This is bad theology. God is omnipresent. He didn't need the dirt to take back to Syria, but it does represent like this radical life change. Like, listen, I'm all in for God, right? But then we get to verse 18, and 18 to me is just messy. However, may the Lord pardon me in this one thing. When my master, the king, goes into the temple of the god of Rimmon to worship there and leans on my arm, may the Lord pardon me when I bow too. So I'm bothered by this, right? Because this feels like compromise. This feels like a concession. It just doesn't sit right in our, like, we want clear lines sort of thing. And then Elisha says, sure, go in peace. He didn't say absolutely not. And I think that's the important thing for us to understand here. Life change in a culture far from God will be messy. You see, we want things neat and organized. We want clear lines of delineation of like right is right and wrong is wrong and good is good and bad is bad. We want things to be clean and neat and tidy. But sometimes it's not. I think even Jesus knew that. Jesus understood the challenges that would happen when we walk with Him in a culture that is messy and with messy lives. In fact, He says this in Matthew chapter 10, verse 16. Look, I am sending you out as sheep among wolves. This is the messy world thing. So be as shrewd as snakes and as harmless as doves. In other words, be good. But as you figure out how to be good, it's going to take some finesse and some wisdom. And I think Naaman knew that, and we need to know that. And if I think many of you probably already know that. Now, I think about, like, I cannot tell you how many lunch meetings, breakfast meetings, and coffee meetings I have had with guys who work at Sandia National Labs. So I just want to say this, government, if you're listening, none of them have ever told me any secrets. In fact, many of them have said, I have stuff that I got to carry to the grave. So y'all do some pretty amazing, high-level, high-classified sort of stuff that I know causes you some internal strife. In fact, I've heard from guys before, like, I love that I'm protecting our country, and I love the development of stuff that we are doing, but I also know that in the wrong hands, it can destroy a lot of lives. And so there are challenges that come with that. And just the mere fact of working with government. There's a lot of people. In fact, you look at the size of government throughout, our federal level and state level and local level. That employs a lot of people. And some people have to grapple with the fact of, I love Jesus and I have my values based in a biblical worldview, but the government that I work for does not. And so it's sometimes a messy sort of thing to be in that. And I also think about sensitivity training. Many of you have gone through sensitivity training in your jobs. And more recently, many of you have gone through training about pronouns, about gender identity, about making work a safe space, and all of those different things. And listen, you know what you believe, and you know your values, and you know your commitment to Jesus, but you also know that there's an obligation for you to love people as the image of God, and God's ultimate desire is to see people come to repentance, come to follow Jesus. And so it can be messy. And I've talked with medical professionals who have sometimes struggled with the medications that are kind of required for specific diagnoses, and sometimes medical tests that are needed. And to know that they're basically going through the red tape, but they're causing a whole lot of expense because insurance companies say you got to do this, and then you got to do this, and you got to do this, and you got to do this. And it's a struggle. I've even talked to insurance guys before, salesmen who have to push certain products because that's what the company tells them to do, but they realize that those specific products aren't always good for the people that they're doing business with. See, I think all of us at some point in time either have or will struggle with how do we maintain faith, how do we live with conviction, but at the same time, how do we love and value people without rubber stamping sin? So it's messy. It's true. It really is messy. And so with that, one of the things that I think we need to understand, and I want to put this as our bottom line here today, following Jesus must produce life change. But life change in a culture that is far from God will be messy. And so we just got to deal with this particular mess right here in a real way, in real time. And so with that, I just want to offer a couple of ways forward. One is this: embrace messy. Instead of trying to make the mess go away, embrace that life is going to be messy, that people are going to be messy, their pasts are going to be messy. And all of this is something that is just a reality. But Jesus entered our mess so that our mess would not convict us for eternity. Also this: ask God to protect your heart as you live in a messy world. I can't speak to like say this is you, but I can say this is me. So I want to share this. If you want my blood to boil, talk to me about politics. I could go from 0 to like happy to a lunatic in about a nanosecond. When I open up my browser or a news app and I read about wars raging throughout the world, the Middle East being on fire, I read about the craziness of the political cycle in our nation, and I don't know if y'all figured this out. There's a new crisis about every 7 days because we have attention spans of gnats. And so it's a news story and another story and another story, and social media is on fire because of a depiction of the communion, which we're getting ready to take, and drag queens instead of the apostles, and all of this stuff hurts my heart. And when my heart hurts, it doesn't break, it gets hardened. And so I think you're probably the same way. So we need to be asking God to protect and guard our heart. Also, I'm just going to say this. Seek Jesus first. Jesus kind of said that in Matthew chapter 6. We went through that this year, but seek ye first the kingdom of heaven and His righteousness and His kingdom, right? Really seek Jesus first. And I recently read in the book, and I was like, man, I wish I would have had that when I was actually preaching this particular passage a couple of months ago. But basically what the guy said is, we are consumed with who, what, when, how, why, right? But he says what Jesus does is simplify life. He said, all you have to be consumed with is who? Follow me. Seek me. Seek to be like me. Learn about me. Seek my kingdom. Seek my righteousness. And I will take care of the what and the when and the how and the why. Just seek me. In a messy world, maybe an honest prayer is, Jesus, I don't know what I'm supposed to do right now, but I want more of you in my life. I don't know how I'm supposed to interact in this situation. I just want more of you. And Jesus gives us this promise. When we get consumed with the what of life, if you just seek me, all these other things will be added. I'll take care of it. Will you join me in prayer?